Ready? All right, welcome everybody to what I'm sure will be a fun and exciting afternoon at City Council Chambers. I'd like to call to order the July 16th, 2024 meeting of the City of Charleston Traffic and Transportation Committee. Thank everybody for being here. Begin with a moment of silence, and as we have our moment of silence, we can keep in our thoughts and prayers Councilmember Gregg and his family on the loss of Councilmember Gregg's father, and Chief Walker on the loss of his father as well. Thank you. Okay, first thing on our agenda is approval of our minutes for May 28th, 2024. Do I have a motion? Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion, additions, deletions, corrections? If not, all in favor? Are there any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is for discussion only, and if there's any question about why this is for discussion and not on our agenda to be moved forward to City Council, it's because we enacted an ordinance last year that required a 2-week sort of waiting period. So I'd like to have any discussion y'all might have on this, and then we'll get it ready for the next meeting. So anyway, Councilmember Gregg's not here. Ms. Copeland is here, and she's going to tell us what this is all about, and hopefully we can move this along pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
members of the committee. So this request came from Councilman Gregg. Apparently there's an issue on Daniel Island specifically with teenagers and children jumping off of bridge spans. So he asked that we put together something that council could consider and hopefully adopt. This specifically is very simple. Just makes it unlawful to climb under, over, or around any superstructure or bridge within the city. We provided an exception in here for anyone who's legally using a walkway for the public or performing any kind of construction, permanent construction on the bridge. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for Ms. Copeland on this? By the way, this is not as a result just built, which is dead flat going across the creek. There is a bridge on Daniel Island that connects Captain's Island from Daniel Island, and it actually does have a pretty good rise on it. Apparently, it has become somewhat of an attractive nuisance for youngsters to go over and jump on. So no action to be taken on this. Are there any questions or concerns about this ordinance? Because when it comes back to us in August, we are going to vote on it. Got anything to add, delete? Yes, please do it now. Or
Do you,
not. Go ahead.
do you anticipate any, based on other municipalities that have done something like this, any gray areas or pushback or?
None that I'm aware of. In fact, the bulk of this came from neighboring municipalities that already have one in force.
Awesome.
The bridge jumpers group from Hand maybe, but I think we're okay. All right, we'll bring this back. I'm going to report tonight. Oh, I guess I'll report out that was favorably received and more to come. Next, number 4 is an agreement to fund traffic improvement with Pulte Home Company LLC. I think somewhere online, and there she is Ms. Crutherds. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen. Okay, so this is an agreement to fund traffic improvements with Pulte Development regarding the shade tree development. I think it's also called Oakfield neighborhood, but I can be corrected if I'm wrong. Let's see. All right. So the background is in 2015, we adopted a PUD, and then Pulte purchased the property. You can see it here as a general outline. We did a traffic study for the traffic impacts on Cane Splash and River Road. As a result of that, the city and Pulte agreed that Pulte would do some improvements, which we'll get into. They begin fulfilling their requirements, but then we've run into some issues. And so now we want to come up with a different agreement. And there we go. Okay, so this is what the PUD was. It was these TMS numbers, approximately 352 acres. And this kind of gives you a larger overview of where the PUD is highlighted in blue right here. You've got River Road, Maybank, and then Cane Slash is right here. This is just this is what was part of the ordinance. And So the traffic impact study, we had an original one and then it was updated. And the main things are that Pulte would install a right turn lane approaching Cane/Slash Road and separate left and right turn lanes onto River Road. And this is what it looks like right here. From River Road turning right, this blue arrow is what the proposed improvement would be onto Cane/Slash, and then from Cane/Slash onto River Road. We also had additional requirements for them, which were to connect Kemerlin Street right here to Cane/Slash Road. And once that was done, to install a sidewalk from Kemerlin to Wilkes Battery Boulevard, the roundabout right here, all along Cane/Slash Road. So the reason why we're here now is a couple of reasons. One, Pulte was having difficulty obtaining some SCDOT permits for this area. And then the second one is we started talking to the county about the Southern Pitchfork, which is very generally in the area of this red line. And we don't know exactly what the final plans are going to be or where it's going to end up, but it could make these arrows right here, we could have to redo them in 3 to 5 years, depending on what all we decide. So we went to Pulte and said, what can we come up with? And what we are presenting to you now is that Pulte would pay the city a fee for funding the traffic mitigation efforts, and then we would actually perform the work once we figure out what the best plan is. So the numbers that we came up with, there was an estimate for Pulte to fulfill its obligations of $714,000. That is broken down, the traffic mitigation efforts of $630,000. And this is the breakdown for that. We've got construction costs, project contingency, minus project contingency and estimated demolition. And then an additional cost for the Kemerlin Road connection. And they have already expended almost $132,000 already. So we subtracted that since they were already starting to fulfill their requirements. And that leaves us with a total of around $582,000. So this is the summary of the agreement that we're asking you to approve today. Pulte was initially required to install these traffic mitigation requirements and the cost of, but instead they're going to pay the city $498,400 for the city to install traffic mitigation once our plans are finalized. So again, we're not exactly sure what they are, but we didn't feel like them having to do something and then us coming back later and maybe undoing it was a smart decision. They originally were having to do the Kemerlin Street connection. Instead, they are going to fund the city around $84,000 for us to install the Kemerlin connection at some point in the future. And then Pulte will disclose to home buyers on Kemerlin that it will eventually connect to Cane/Slash. There is a disclosure in the agreement that says we're under no timeline to do these things because we don't know when all this is going to happen. And then Pulte's obligation to install the sidewalk, we are just releasing and waiving that obligation. Questions?
Yeah, we're gonna have to flesh this out a little bit because this is a commercial area, obviously on Johns Island. I talked to about this earlier today. I got some more background and before I get into the rest of Cane/Slash and River Road, I understand it. I'm gonna add some color to it. It has to do with the county transportation sales tax and
Councilmember McBride, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry. your connection is a little weak.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go. This got better. Okay. Okay, can you hear this one? This sounds
Yes,
better.
sir.
Okay. So I talked to Mr. Mathis earlier today about this, and I want to add some context, more context, and you did a good job. Just add more context to the Cane Slash and River Road issue, because it has to do with the county's transportation sales tax referendum they have coming up this November. But first, I want to ask about Kemerlin, because that's the only part I don't understand why we're not just letting Pulte connect Kemerlin Street. The rest of it I get, and I'll talk to that in a second, but do we know why we're not?
We do, and I'm sure that there is someone there that can probably explain it better than me.
I got Mr. Mathis here.
Okay,
So as part of the traffic impact study, the developer was required to do these improvements at River and Cane Slash. Those improvements are within Charleston County, not actually within the city of Charleston. So, and there were issues with trees and different things, but before the DOT would allow the connection at Kemerlin onto Cane Slash, they wanted the improvements completed. Because the improvements could not be completed, DOT would not issue the encroachment permit at Kemerlin.
Okay, so DOT has prevented Kemerlin from being instructed, basically, at this point.
Correct. Yes, just the small connection between Kemerlin and Cane Slash. Yes, sir. So the DOT was aware of the traffic study and the mitigation that was required as part of that traffic study. It required the DOT's approval to move forward. Cane Slash is the DOT road. So in order for the developer to connect Kemerlin to Cane Slash, they needed DOT's approval. And DOT would not give that approval until the mitigation was completed at River and Cane Slash. And since we could not complete those improvements because of trees and other things, the DOT would not issue that encroachment permit. So the developer could not complete their requirements as part of that mitigation in the traffic study.
Because DOT won't let them yet. I mean,
Yeah, DOT won't allow the connection of Kemerlin to Cane Slash until the improvements are made at River and Cane Slash. And the improvements at River and Cane Slash cannot be completed because of tree issues and other things within the county.
okay.
Right? They've got requirements that we adopted back in 2000. Some of the requirements couldn't be met because of forces outside of control of either the city or the developer. So they now want to hand out money instead of responsibility to us and have us then accept the burden, responsibility, and challenge of going and completing the things that are required from the fund. Is that what this is all about?
Essentially, yes, sir. And we have other opportunities at River Road with the Southern Pitchfork that we'll be working through in the future, hopefully.
I just shorten this and move to defer. I think we I'm confused by, and we can try to hash it out on this committee meeting. That's what we're trying not to do. So I would move to defer. We need a lot more information. That's not a slight of staff. It's just this seems like it's a long way to go before we can.
I think motion to defer made by the mayor. Is there a second?
Can I do one clarifying comment? Just sure, yeah, I second. All right, and we'll obviously have an opportunity to hash this out again in the future. But I do get the rest of what the issue, because if the voters pass the transportation sales tax referendum in November, which there's no guarantee they will, but if they do, part of the Maybank East project is the Southern Pitch. And part of the county's plan is to realign road to money on doing turn lanes on river onto Kane/road that's going to move in 5 years. So that's a waste of money. So I get that part of it. That's the rest of it. I'm not sure.
Is this time sensitive? No?
No, it is.
We're good.
Yeah. So there's a motion, a second. Mayor? Well, first off, Melissa, thank you for that presentation. Please don't lose that presentation because I think it's going to be important for us to get educated on this. And we're probably going to need to hear from Pulte. And I think one of the things I want to hear is whether or not if we're taking money from the developer in lieu of them doing work, we're getting enough. That seems to be a thing. Anyway, we'll defer this. Seeing as there's no rush, we'll probably defer this till the fall, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's a rush. In the meantime, let's get with Melissa. Any questions you've got for her and for Mr. Somerville. We'll put them all together and revisit this. Yeah. All right, all in favor to say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is deferred until a later date to be determined. Next, speed reduction request, Mr. Somerville.
I give this
We
a
got
try.
two of them.
Yes, we got two requests. Both of them came in March of this year. The first request for Pearl Channel Loop, which is off Secessionville Road. That actually came in as a traffic calming request. But based on the volume, it just didn't meet the requirements. So we did the speed study. And you see that, I believe the average speed recorded on this street was 14 miles an hour with the 85th at 20 miles an hour. So the recommendation is to reduce the speed limit down to 20 miles an hour. And the second request is Rain Song Drive, Island Shore subdivision. I believe that's off of Woodland Shores. That one came in as a request to reduce the speed limit. They actually asked for it to be at 15 miles an hour. We did the study, the average speed was 20, 85th percentile was 25 miles an hour, and the volume of vehicles on that street was 123. So we're requesting that to be 20 miles an hour as well.
All right, couple recommendations for reduced speed on Pearl Channel Road and Rain Song Drive. Have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second. Second.
Second. Real quick question. Is there any reason why we won't put it at 15?
Well, it was a question about enforcement. We were told that it's very difficult to enforce a speed that low.
Seems to me it's.
Can we get-
It's the pain point, 15. And okay, I think the lower, the better. I mean, some people are just naturally so pleased, they see us speed limit lower, they see kids in the neighborhood. Any other questions, discussions, comments, or on this matter? Not all in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, Mr. Mattis.
Yes, sir. Just one for today. We have application for certificate of public convenience and necessity, and staff has approved as well as legal department, and we are recommending approval.
Second. Second.
Any discussion? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That is the end of the agenda. Is there any other to come before this committee?
I have a couple of questions.
Right.
I think either at our last meeting or the meeting before, I had questions regarding where are we with King Street from Calhoun forward. Remember, we were trying to decide whether or not we're going to make it totally pedestrian, whether or not we're going to take out a lane, blah, 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 blah. But I haven't heard anything about it since.
Sure, we've met with DOT and what you'll recall, the proposed bike lane and improvements on King Street were part of a much larger plan that including Meeting Street and Phillip Street and Calhoun Street. So there was a lot of concerns from businesses on King Street about shutting the lanes down. And so what I've asked for, we talked with DOT and they've agreed to do, is to move forward, which they're doing on St. Philip's, Calhoun and Meeting Street improvements, then testing data and actually continuing St. Philip from George to Bufane and checking the data for pedestrian and bike along Phillip, which was the preference of the College of Charleston as well. And once we get data that warrants an additional lane, because it's taking, you'll recall, 6 southbound lanes between King, St. Philip, and Meeting Street and dropping it down to 3. So instead of 3, we're dropping it down to 4. And we want to see how that improvement goes before we take the added step.
Okay,
And they've agreed to that.
okay. So right now, the King Street piece is on hold. My next question. There was a study, it's my understanding, done by, again, the Department of Transportation for Spring, and I guess Lockwood, Haywood, Rutledge. There was some type of study that was done recently, traffic study done.
I believe you're talking about the road safety audit that was
Right.
done for September Clark.
Yes,
That's still in the review stages.
okay,
We have met with the DOT again at the very beginning, just to see, where they are thus far. But they are not ready to implement anything, or at this time, they're not ready, but there will be public meetings. They will do outreach before anything moves forward.
and will they help us pay for any of their recommendations?
I think they're going to cover all of it.
Okay, and
Point of clarification, when they do a road safety audit, and we're dealing with this in West Ashley and James Island, they will come up with their safety plan. Isn't always the prettiest plan. So they will pay for the improvements for safety. There's a likelihood, depending on what the design and plan is, that we might want to beautify it a little bit. So just for full disclosure on that one, clarification.
okay, and then the final question, a resident asked me, but I haven't seen it in any of our materials. You know, when we have a flood and people speed down the flooded area, causing waves, Gordon Street is one place for that. Creek bed, and Fishburne is another place, okay? And I was asked, are we doing any signage?
So, good news.
Okay.
Here's good news, we're going to public safety. Then
Okay.
this week, it's moved to the traffic and transportation agenda for our next meeting with some amendments to make sure it's right. So in conjunction with all the things that we need from signage, some added barricades, we're also going to have some legal infrastructures for some enforcement and all that. My understanding is we're funded to get some more barriers, barricades, and the ordinance also require or has built in it signage that.
I can't resist. We call it no wake zones.
No, right, I couldn't remember what he told me, but no wave zone, right, okay, yes.
So that's
All right.
on your agenda.
That was my,
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns from any member of the committee? If not, we are adjourned.
okay.